In this chapter, we're going to take a look at how to use CSS to do some styling on our website. Now, of course, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and up front, we're going to focus right on the style part. We want to be able to add some of our own formatting to our pages now. Now, as usual, we've got some files to work with. So I've got my working files open up to Chapter 5, and we can open up the tryout CSS HTML file. I'll open it up in the browser first, and we'll also go ahead and open it up in our text application. Now, as you can see, we've just got a simple file to work with a few headings and paragraphs. And when we take a look at it, that's all we're seeing inside the code. We're seeing basic HTML organizing our content. Now, CSS does have its own set of rules, but it fits inside of the HTML context that we're using. And we fit it inside of our HTML in 3 different ways. We're going to be trying out all 3, but the first one is by using the style attribute. Now, I'm just going to pick out the first heading in our document up here at the top, and we're going to add an attribute to the h1 tag that we see here. Of course, it's going to be the style attribute. And since it's an attribute, we're going to have the equal sign after it, and our value is going to be in quotes, just like all the other attributes that we've worked with. What's different about the style attribute is the way that we write the value, and we write it using CSS syntax. Now, as an example, I'd like to just center the heading on the page. And to do that, I need to use a property called text-align. So let's add that in our style attribute. And I want to set that to a value of centered. Within CSS styling rules, I use a colon here for an assignment. And then I put in the value I want to assign it to, center. Notice that we're not using equal sign and quotes because we're already inside of a style attribute value. Now, each CSS rule is going to end with a semicolon at the end, so I'll put one at the end of ours. And then I'll close the quotes on the style attribute value. Now we've made our first style rule. Let's just save our page. And let's go back over to our browser, and we'll just refresh the page. And now, of course, our heading is now centered on the page, just as we expected. Now, as we go through some more syntax, you'll see that CSS gets even more powerful. For instance, we can have more than one style setting in the same attribute. Let's go back to our document, and let's try out another property. Now, I'm just going to pick out another common one. If I wanted to italicize this heading, I would use the font-style property, and I would set it to a value of italic. So let's see how we can set that up. First of all, I can add another style rule right behind this one. I'll just go inside of the quote marks that we left from before, and let's add in a font style property. Notice it's font-style. I'll use a colon after it when I want to set the value, and the value that I want to set is italic. I'll close off my CSS rule with a semicolon, and we'll save our changes and go take a look. Now, as you can see, we're getting both the centering and the italics from one style attribute. The style attribute is what we call a global attribute, and that basically means you could add it to any tag in the entire HTML specification. We could take this same style attribute here. I'll just copy it right out of the heading tag, and I'll go down to one of our paragraph tags, and I'll just add it in. You can see that I'm following the attribute syntax for the paragraph. So let's save our changes, and let's go back to our document, refresh, and now we also have this paragraph centered and italicized. Now you can see that the font size hasn't changed at all. We still have the same size that our text was originally, and you can see the differences in sizes reflected between the heading and the paragraph that we had from before. But we basically have assigned that style down in 2 places now. Of course, not everything that we want to style is going to be inside of a nice block tag like H1 or P. So let's go back to our document and let's take a look at how we can apply a style just to a set of words. For instance, what if I wanted to apply a style to these 3 words right here in the center of the paragraph? You'll notice right now there's no tag around it. So we actually have a tag that we can use specifically to mark those 3 words for a style, and that's the span tag. So I'll start off by adding our span tag right at the beginning. Now, of course, I need a close span tag at the end. And by itself, the span tag really won't do much of anything. If we leave it just like this, we won't see any change in our browser window. So let's go ahead and add in the attribute. Now, I'm just going to add in the same attribute that we had before. I think I still have it in my clipboard, so I'll just paste it on in. And you can see that now that we have that span tag there, it can hold my style attribute, and it sets it up so that it'll be applied to those 3 words. Let's save our changes. And let's go back out and take a look at our document. I'll reload the page, and we can see that our words are showing up as italic. But let me just point out one other thing. We also set a style on there that should center the text, and you can see that our text is still in the paragraph like it was originally set. And what that means is we can't apply properties to every element inside of HTML. For instance, span tags are not block tags. They're more of what we refer to as phrase tags, kind of like the bold, strong, and M tags that we saw before. Whereas paragraph and heading are block tags. Well, we have another tag that we can use to group together elements into a block, and that tag is called div. So what I'm going to do is I'll add a div tag right before the H3 heading here at the top. And then what I'll do is I'll close the tag off down below the first paragraph. We'll add a line there, add in our closed div tag. And what we've done is we've grouped the H3 and the paragraph together. Now, very much like the span tag, the div tag isn't going to do a whole lot on its own, but we now have a place to store that attribute. So let me go ahead and paste that attribute back in here. I'm just going to use the text align part, so I'll remove the italics part from this one. And as we saw before, the text align center doesn't really work for our words in the span tag down here, so I'll just remove them since they're not going to be effective anyway. Now let's save our changes. Let's go back out to our document, and let's hit a refresh. Now you can see that grouping that I put into the div tag is also shown as centered text.